if you want to take a second just to introduce yourself, tell the folks who you are.
My name is Bill Almeida. I'm a gaffer based here in New York, New Jersey. And thanks for having me here today.
What have you worked on that people would know?
I've done the first 3 John Wick movies.
Okay.
Quiet
Might be
Place.
Casual.
Yeah.
Kind of a big deal. Kind of a big deal.
Some of the best action movies of
I've
all
been
time.
around for a while.
Just,
I watched the movies that you worked on growing up, going into film school, coming out of film school, and then I get to go on set, and I'm like, oh, that's the guy. How does working on this level benefit you? Do you get to play with all the fun new lights? Do all the vendors out here kind of push for you to use their products?
There's definitely a push sometimes. I do get access to a lot of gear, which is great. I mean, some of the film, I've been very fortunate to work on some of these projects with, great cinematographers, great directors, and, higher budgets, which definitely open up the doors to, being able to play with some of these toys. So, vendors definitely reach out and send me demos, and, you get to try out different things, which is pretty cool. So, love that.
Do you have a favorite light, and why is it the Ruby 7?
Yeah.
I actually do like the Ruby 7.
Everyone does.
I love the Ruby 7.
It's gotten me out of trouble a few times. God, there's so many lights out there. They all have your unique place. If I had to pick a couple, I would pick the Astera Titan tube. I mean, I think it's probably one of everyone's favorites. I think a Par 64 fire starter, a 1200 watt fire starter, that's definitely an awesome old school light. And then, just a Vortex 8. I mean, those 3 lights kind of get a lot done with that.
I want to ask about John Wick because I want to ask, first off, that must have been amazing. But also, how are you hiding these lights in these rooms? Because it seems like they're shooting 360 at points with these action sequences, and where do you light it from? How do you do that?
There was definitely a progression throughout the first 3 movies that I did with the the lighting. The first one was one DP. It was Jonathan Sella. We used very little LED on camera, but when Dan Lawson came in to do 2 and 3, we started to introduce things, especially on 2. 2, we started putting tubes in the frame. And actually kind of became a thing that Dan loved them. He had never used the tubes before, and they were in the shot all the time. We did a scene at the steps on the library on 5th Avenue in the pouring rain, and we had 30 tubes, and it looked really cool. And Dan just fell in love with that look, and kind of became pretty popular around that time. And you started seeing music videos and other films, and everyone was kind of featuring the lights in frame. And then I think that kind of started getting old, and then we started, by the time 3 came around, there weren't so much in the frame so much. There were, maybe a couple times, but they were more hidden. On 3, we had this cool set, the Glass House, and it was a set that cost, I think, between $2 and $3 million, and it was 3 levels. It was all made out of glass and steel.
This is the climax scene.
Yeah. So it was really hard to hide lights. So we had to build all the lighting into it. And in that particular set, we had, if you were standing on the 3rd floor of this set, you can look through the floor, into the 2nd floor, through the 2nd floor, and onto the 1st floor. So you can see a person 2 floors below you. And we had built LED ribbon into every crevice that we could put. So basically every column, it had to be made out of steel because it had to support all this glass, and it had to support human beings. So it had to be really structurally sound. Every column, all 4 sides of the columns had LEDs that we built into it. And there were 3 LEDs wide. So here's a fun fact. We used just over 1 mile of LED ribbon to do that.
Oh my God.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Lightyear was very happy.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I think on 3, the scene that I got to work on was when the SWAT team comes into the the lights go out. Yeah, into the Continental. They throw the flashbang, and all the lights go out, but then this green light ribbon lights up almost the entire interior. So how do you go about choosing, say you're going to do a tube or light ribbon? Is it just kind of like what the set deck already looks like? You see what works?
I think Dan in that case, he that was a bank in Williamsburg, beautiful location, and Dan really just wanted to, we were trying to figure out how we're going to light this when the lights go out, it's some sort of backup emergency stylized lighting. So we literally just took ribbon, and it wasn't even in any kind of housing or profile. It was just raw ribbon stuck right onto the marble, and we just picked surfaces that we wanted to trace, and we just put it all over the place. And literally on the day, we just figured out what color we wanted to use for that sequence. So, it was a lot of fun. I mean, that film, every film just kept getting elevated with the color and the action sequences, and eventually the color really became a part of the film. When we started the first one, we had to create this otherworldly feel. So this John Wick characters, they're getting paid with gold coins. It's almost like a video game-esque quality to it. It's not real life. So we had to do kind of like a heightened reality, and we used color to do that and lighting. So it made it super stylized. And then every movie we just had to kind of up the previous one.
So you just mentioned the heightened reality of that. The cool thing about John Wick is it really pulls you into this world. But one of the more recent projects that you worked on top of that too was Fallout, which is literally a video game. Can you talk about does the lighting style for something like that's already based on something that is made up, does that kind of change? I think some of that was shot on a volume wall. So did you have to change the way that you did any of your processes to bring us into a whole nother world like that?
A little bit. Fallout was shot on film, which brought another set of challenges because not too many film projects going around these days. So I think a lot of people have kind of let their guard down a little bit when shooting film, and you had to kind of up the volume a little bit on some of the lighting. When we shot on the volume, you shoot on a LED environment, and you can kind of take advantage of the light coming from the panels itself, and it's great for digital cinematography. But we're shooting film, so we had to really help it a little bit. We had our volume stage was pretty big. It was 24 feet tall, I believe, and it was, I think, 80 by 80. So we had set pieces that were built within the space, so we had to project light into the space and kind of reinforce sometimes it was plates, sometimes it was virtual sets that were built. We had several hundred sky panel S60s that we used. We literally lined them up side by side around the entire perimeter of the volume, which was a U-shaped space, like a horseshoe. And depending on what we were doing, we tried different techniques on how to reinforce the images that were being projected. For example, some of the salt planes for sequences with the vertibird, those were actual plates shot traditionally. They went out with a helicopter and a bunch of cameras and stitch it together. We played back. So one thing that we did, that was the first thing up. So my first time working on a volume, I'm thinking to myself, how the hell are we going to do this? There's no school, there's no training. We're just kind of figuring things out as we go. And we did some testing. So for that particular sequence, we tried pixel mapping the lights to some of the top edge of the screen. So for example, it was a lot of sky in that particular sequence. Now a sky panel only has 2 pixels, basically. 2 panels, each one its own engine. So sometimes in the blue sky, you'll hit a magenta pixel or a red pixel, and all of a sudden that light becomes red or magenta. So it didn't work out so great. Our second go, we tried sampling the sky and throwing kind of like a diffusion filter over the sample area, which would kind of average out the pixels, and we got more even color. That was another attempt at trying to figure things out. And then finally, I think on a third grow, we just built cues that we played video, we stopped, we built a queue, advanced it, built another queue, and then we had it all sunk up with time code, and that was another attempt at doing the work that was needed. But again, there was no real way of there's no predetermined path that we said that we were going to take. It was definitely a learning discovery, and I was online trying to figure out who's done this. The Gaffer from the first season of Mandalorian, he had shared some information which was very helpful to me, I have to say. So when people come on to social media or forums or go to an expo and they share their experiences, I think that that's very valuable, because there's no film school for that type of stuff.
And that's common within your line of work, like Gaffer sharing best practices. And
it can be. I mean, when I'm with people that I'm close to, we definitely share information. We share our experiences. Hey, we use this new light that's pretty great for this. You should check it out. So I get a lot of input, a lot of recommendations that way.
And also a lot of hey, watch out for this.
Sometimes there's that too. Be careful. They're still working on the firmware. It's not maybe up to spec, But I mean, that's kind of what we're the world that we're in now. There's so much technology that comes out that you have to try and keep up with, and
is that pretty typical in a production that you work on, where you get that time to sort of R&D on the day, or was that unique to Fallout itself?
I mean, on some of the jobs I've been lucky to land recently, there has been time. Usually a cinematographer comes in and maybe they've seen a light or I've seen a light that we that might be an interesting light to use. I gotta let's see what kind of job comes my way, and maybe I'll have an opportunity to use it. So then during prep, you try and get some demos arranged and you do some testing. So yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty common. I mean, I think a lot of people definitely have a day or two that they can play around.
Could you talk a little bit about I guess now, these projects where you're seeing these LED strips or you're using that many sky panels or anything like that, how has your workflow shifted, relying on a board op now compared to 10, 15 years ago?
Oh yeah, that's a big part of the game now. I can't do a job without a board op, and I also have a board op on my rigging crew. I have a data techs, and that's kind of how I've been rolling these days. And I have really good guys, and if I get called for a job where they feel that they don't need that, I would even consider passing on the job, because I don't want to lose those guys to another crew, So it's critical. I mean, everything now is an LED light. Color is critical. These digital cameras today are so sensitive. They're everyone's a little different from each other, so you always have to tweak the color temps or the tint or this. So I always would like to have full control. I think most people are starting to roll that way. I think it's pretty common, and I tell you, it speeds up production so much. Usually, the old days, I came up in the film days where you light, and then finally the AD's all right, you guys are done. We got to bring the actors on, and the DP still wants to tweak a little bit more. So, you do a take and, they're resetting and they're all right, run in here real quick and drop a single in that light. Or now I'm at the DIT with the DP, and we're constantly, changing level, color, tweaking. No one even knows that it's going on. You don't want to change too much, between takes, because, they can use something from take 1 and something from take 7, and it's not going to match. But, a little tweaking for sure.
It also must broaden what you can do, how you can change color, manipulate a scene, where things where you'd have to do it manually. Now it's one guy can program it. Kind of gives you a bigger view of what you could achieve.
Oh yeah, I mean the programmer now, I mean on Fallout we had tons of effect stuff that we were constantly doing, explosions, flickering lights, just background lights, cues. It's critical. It's important to have it installed and laid out right. And sometimes in the film world we're under the gun, and you're going from location to location to location. It's not like you're setting up a venue where everyone's kind of working towards one goal, and that venue is the equivalent of like a scene. But in the movie, you're shooting scene after scene, location after show. So it's like kind of relentless, the pace. And you have different technicians kind of rotating through as well. I rely heavily on my rigging gaffer, my rigging programmer, and those guys are kind of like the consistency to make sure it's all going to be the same for me every day. So when I show up with my shooters and my board op, we're pretty much ready to rock and roll. But technology, it's going back to like doing things the old way. Like we used to do these poor man processes with cars, and we've all seen those crazy rigs that people do nowadays. I mean, we've always done it. It's gotten easier nowadays with some of the LED lighting. I've recently been able to use video panels to do some poor man's process, and it is a game changer. I don't ever want to go back to the old way of doing it.
A process trailer anymore.
I mean, sometimes you got to go out there and do it for real. But being in like a black limbo studio, or maybe there's like some blue screen or something, and you got the guys with the spinning lights and the all the little rigs, the dolly with two little peppers in the back as a car headlight, and the grips, and you're there all day. It's amazing, like that you can pull it off. And we've all seen movies that were done that way, and they look great. But I was never a fan of doing it because we'd start setting up, and like, well, what are the plates? Like sometimes they didn't even have the plates, so you don't even know what lighting you're matching to. You're just kind of guessing at things. You're like, oh, we're gonna like shoot something on 6th Avenue, and you're like, all right, well, you fake it. But now if you go out and you get plates, you can be in a blue screen environment and surround the car with panels and just play back the plates, and these digital sensors, they capture everything, and that's your interactive lighting, and it's repeatable. It's on cue. I'm sure it's not cheap. I'm not sure a lot of productions can't do it.
But it saves time, right?
Oh my God, it saves so much time.
And it gives the actor like something real to react to too.
Oh,
it's,
totally.
Yeah, it's like you can look out the driver's side window and see what you're supposed to be.
I did a movie that came out last year called Instigators, and every single car interior in that, it was an action heist film. Every single car interior was shot in a blue screen with LED walls around it for interactive light. And we had buses, we had fire trucks, we had SWAT vehicles, sedans. I mean, we had so many different vehicles. We had day, we had night, we had cars driving through tunnels, and we shot for about a week and a half, and we were able to just flow from scene to scene, bring in the next video, queue up the plates, and we can add virtual lights, which we did a lot. Panels. You can pick the color, and figure out where you want to place them, and I mean, it's just so easy. It's so efficient. It looks so real. And then once the producers see it, they're like, "Yeah, this is the way to do it."
I mean, just the logistics on what you explain would be way more than a week. Like all those different vehicles in tunnels.
There would have been no way to do what we did in like a traditional poor man's process with all those spinning rigs or this and that. You would, it would take
insane.
More than that. Money well spent.
You mentioned earlier that you had gone to a workshop from the gaffer that worked on The Mandalorian, and you learned basically what he was doing on that show that kind of helped you work with this technology. What would you say was your biggest takeaway from that workshop when you were there, as you were moving into this space of like working with the volume and working with this new way of lighting, essentially?
His job was way bigger than Fallout. Fallout was pretty big. I mean, Mandalorian was huge, and they had ILM as like their VFX house. So ILM was doing a lot of the software, and they had some extra tools that I wish I had. Like Jeff, he had an iPad that he was able to bring on like light cards on the video, or black cards, and change the color and intensity and basically build a source. I didn't quite have that, and that's part of the thing there, because these volume stages, like, number one, there isn't a permanent one in New York, and this is where I'm based. This is where I want to work. So if you had a facility that you can go and work at repeatedly, and the people who are working on the software, they can keep developing it and build tools based on the needs of cinematographers and gaffers, then we have a little bit more ease working with the technology. I got a lot of tips from him about removing tiles in the ceiling and actually having chain motors where you can drop down and hang lights, being kind of prepared like that, for things. It was actually his presentation was for the ICLS, which is the International Cinema Lighting Society, which I'm a member of, and it was a lighting society that kind of formed out of COVID. When we were all in lockdown, a bunch of gaffers from around the world were getting together on the weekends and talking about how are we ever going to get back to work? How are we going to do things?
Oh, that's great, though.
Eventually that got kind of boring, and we started talking about well, hey, what kind of rigs have you guys done? So we started sharing photos and talking about how to deal with production managers and this and that, and they eventually formed a legit society. So Jeff was able to do a presentation. And guys do that. They do a film, they take pictures, they do a lot of behind the scenes, and then they go on. And it's members only, and it's a great resource.
As far as sharing lighting rigs and stuff that you've done, have you ever pitched something for a movie and they said sure, and you were like, oh my god, I can't believe they said yes?
I've definitely shared ideas via photos I've done from previous things. When you do these big video things, those decisions are done well before I'm even hired. These volumes and these types of virtual sets, they're definitely part of the filmmaking process today. But the people that need to make those decisions are the producers, the directors that need to understand the technology, the art directors, the production designers. Those are the people in the early stages that are once they're familiar with what can be done, they're the ones who are going to make those critical choices. When it comes in, then I got to figure out how to deal with it, integrate lighting and cues and stuff like that. But that's definitely done beforehand. And again, it's a process because it is kind of expensive. They're not easily available in all the production cities, and people have to get exposed to it. So
I want to ask you one last question. You've had a very broad and long career. Is there anyone you wish or you want to work with?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan. I would love to have worked with Roger Deakins. He's still working,
Oh yeah, he's definitely still working.
That's kind of one of those I can't believe. I think one of his most famous lighting sets. It's the burn scene from Skyfall. If you see the behind the scenes photos of it's just thousands of maxi brutes
I actually stole that rig on a smaller scale, but
nice.
On one of the John Wicks, we had the house was on fire. We had put maxi brutes and stuff all over, and then they just replaced it all. So it was inspired from that rig for sure. But Deakins for sure. I think Rodrigo Prieto, Greg Fraser. Those guys are just amazing cinematographers. They're masters of the lens and the light, and I'd love to collaborate with them someday.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So if you're listening out there, guys,
it might be.
We'll tag them.
Send out positive vibes for you.
Cool. Bill, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
And I hope you enjoy the rest of this vendor showcase.
Yeah, this is a great turnout.